Taco Bell, Starbucks, Burger King. Can't go wrong with a Whopper. Yongsan, it's kind of a little bit of a slice of home.
We have an elementary school, grocery stores, you can buy your clothes, and we also have a hotel here on the installation. Yongsan is very much like a small town within the United States.
This community is just like any American suburb, but there's a catch. This space, Yongsan Garrison, is not in America. It's in the heart of Seoul, South Korea.
And you get the Seoul Tower over here, which is amazing. New York City doesn't have a base, Chicago doesn't. This is a unique example. You can walk out one of the gates and you're in the middle of 100 different restaurants.
For more than 60 years, Yongsan Garrison has been one of the most important strategic military centers to help South Korea contain North Korea.
U.S. Forces Headquarters, the United Nations Command Headquarters, any type of planning operations, everything started here. You're making sure that you're ready to support not only in peacetime, but also being able to fight if, unfortunately, a contingency or some type of war situation were to break out.
In recent years, North Korea has aggressively developed its nuclear program, while China is increasingly asserting its military influence in the area. So the US is revamping its strategy. It's decided to shut down the symbolic facility.
This was a training ground for the cavalry.
John Nowell lived and served at Yongsan Garrison for 54 years. He was part of the 7th Infantry Division and remembers the crucial role the base has played in peacemaking and defense operations in the region. At its peak, about 22,000 Americans were stationed here.
This was the center of the universe. This place was just a hubbub of activity. They had buses coming in and picking up troops and taking them up to other camps all over South Korea.
Back in the day, he says Seoul wasn't as densely packed around the garrison. But by the 90s, skyscrapers popped up, a new metro line was built, urban sprawl caught up with the base.
When I first came to Yongsan Garrison, you wouldn't see any of that. You wouldn't see those tall buildings over there at all. We had then 2 movie theaters. It was special because it brought America home to you. Whenever the war broke out in 25 June of 1950, there was just very few Americans over here.
We found out we were surrounded.
We lost the Yongsan area to the North Koreans. We pushed the North Koreans out. When the Chinese came down, they pushed back into the garrison again. So it was a push, 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 push.
Nowell says because of that history, he remembers always feeling welcomed by South Koreans.
They wouldn't have the life they had we not come and assisted them to save Korea from being swallowed up by the North Korean communists.
But over the years, that sentiment has changed. Once on the outskirts, Yongsan is now right in the middle of the capital, just across the river from hip neighborhoods like Gangnam and just a few miles away from the financial center. While the base is in the process of closing over the next couple of years, the military is still leaving behind a helicopter pad and hotel, with the US Embassy moving in at a later stage, which isn't sitting well with some Koreans.
이 땅이 일제놈들이 점령했던 땅이요. 땅을 제대로 찾아야만이.
Some local residents, like Kim Eun-hee, want to remove all trace of the US presence in the heart of the city.
녹지가 있는 곳? 이거 다 미국 기지예요.
Yongsan has come to represent people's resentment towards America's decades-long presence in their country. The South Korean government is currently debating whether to build high-rise buildings or a park on the site occupied by Yongsan Garrison.
군데군데 이제 어떤 공원 안에 미군 부대가 있다라는 것 자체가 이게 어떻게 공원이 될 수가 있겠냐.
Yongsan wasn't just a military base, but a home for families. Kids were schooled on the base, and families came to pray at the garrison's chapel. Some army staff are even buried in Seoul. But with the base being slowly dismantled, the spirit of Americana on the Korean peninsula is fading. This is the closing ceremony for Yongsan High School, which opened its doors in 1959.
U.S. Army Garrison Yongsan has been the center of one of the largest peacetime transformation in the history of the United States Army.
Streets are now nearly empty. Sections of the base are cordoned off and buildings are left crumbling.
This was hookups for classified material.
Colonel Monica Washington is in charge of the closure. She says shutting down a 60-year-old institution like Yongsan is not easy.
So you're talking about moving people, moving equipment, the sheer scope of what we're having to move. It is a tremendous process.
And being the military, they face a very particular challenge. There can't be any lapse in the mission.
How do you unplug from one location and move to another location at the same time maintaining your day-to-day operations, because operations don't stop just because you're moving from one location to the other.
That means though things are being moved out of the garrison, people can't stop working. Technicians still need to tune up helicopters, and specialists must continue monitoring North Korea's nuclear activity. If anyone goes off duty, the consequences could be fatal.
We are in the midst of a huge transformation. Yongsan will never be what it used to be.
So, where is all of this moving to? The closure of Yongsan doesn't mean the US is leaving the Korean peninsula. Far from it. The military is in the process of opening new headquarters 40 miles south of Seoul. Camp Humphreys will be the US military's largest overseas base in the world. It's in a more strategic location than Yongsan, with better access to sea and airfields.
This is the A-10, one of the baddest attack planes that we've got in the Air Force. This will do some damage rather quickly.
Master Sergeant Mace is part of the Air Force's weather squadron. He recently moved from Yongsan to the new headquarters.
It's vast. It's like going from playing soccer at a small little stadium to a stadium of like 100,000 people.
To him, leaving Yongsan is nostalgic, but it's a necessity.
It is kind of sad to see some abandoned buildings, but at the same time, that's how moves go. You're gonna have to abandon the old and move in with the new. Camp Humphreys, the metropolis of Humphreys, it certainly is unlike anything that I've seen on any military post. It's the future of the military. We are more prepared to complete the mission.